today's video, we're staying at the Hyatt Regency Chicago and checking out the Pokémon Fossil exhibit at the Field Museum. This is my first proper trip to Chicago that wasn't just a layover, and color me impressed. Chicago in the summertime might be one of the most beautiful cities in the world. This is part 1 of our 3-part trip, and the other 2 will focus more on food and other activities. Big favor before we dive in is to give this a thumbs up to help with the algorithm, and if you want to travel smarter, consider subscribing. In terms of locations, the Hyatt Regency Chicago might be one of the best situated hotels if it's your first time in Chicago. It's a huge riverfront hotel with easy access to the Riverwalk, Millennium Park, and Navy Pier. Most of what you want to see is probably a 5 or 10 minute walk away. In the winter when it's freezing, that's not a fun time, but in the summer when the weather is perfect, it's a feature, not a bug. It can get crowded on the weekends, but it's still just fun to walk around. The hard product at the Hyatt is also solid, and with that said, let's check out our room. Welcome to the Hyatt Regency in Chicago. Let's start at the view. So this is a standard room with a lake view. There are some buildings blocking it, so it's a partial view, but not bad at all. It did just finish raining, so a little darker, but this morning it was super bright and beautiful. Throughout the day, when it's not raining, you can see the boats go by. One thing I really like is the couch. So first off, it's gigantic and there's a ton of room, and it's also super comfortable. You could easily take a nap here, and I'd argue that it's a little more comfortable than the bed. Also a great spot to relax by the window and enjoy the view. One thing the room does well are lights, and it just ties the room together. We have some up here, a lot of accenting lights behind, and same thing over here, just really smart design. Nice marble table over here if you want to do some work, but it is a little low, so if you want a bit more structure, I'd go over here. So this is definitely a lot more firm and upright and better posture-wise. Little table lamp. Jumping over here, we have the bed. Pretty comfortable. Pillows were also pretty good, so they were reasonably firm and had structure rather than just being flat like a pancake. Example number 1. Some nice memory foam, but not too stiff. More lights over here. In order to turn things on and off, you do have individual switches rather than one master one. Over on this side, we have the coffee maker, as well as the ice bucket, and also a mini fridge down below. TV's right over here, and it's pretty gigantic. Good 60 inches. This is the view of the room from the other side, and there is a lot of artwork on the wall that is of Chicago. Pretty nice. Heading over here, we have some coat racks for your jackets, mirror over here that's pretty much full body, and then an open closet concept over here for your clothes. Also, here's the ironing board, extra pillows, and the safe. Also the iron. Coming in here, we have the bathroom. Same design styling here with the lights in the back, so it's less harsh. Oh, also there is a clock in the mirror. The shower is pretty normal, not the biggest, not the smallest, but enough room to maneuver, and water pressure was pretty good. The shampoo, conditioner, and body wash are from Pharmacopoeia, and this is from the Argan Oil collection. There's also a hairdryer, and it is just a 1-sink setup. In case you're wondering, the room is right over here. It is a standard sized room, but with a better view, and there are significantly larger rooms, including suites and deluxe rooms on the sides. Still though, for a base room, it's not bad at all. It's a nice modern hotel, and the price is right, especially if you are using points. With that said, let's talk about booking. Chicago is a city with very distinct and dramatic seasons, which heavily impacts the prices of hotels. During colder months like November, you might be looking at about $280 a night for the Hyatt Regency. In mid-January, when the weather drops below freezing, prices might drop to $185 or $200. On the other hand, in peak summer, when the weather's nice and everything is beautiful, expect to pay a premium. For example, it's not abnormal to see prices between $400 to $600, even for just a standard room. If you're into award travel, this is currently a Category 4 hotel. The room that will run you 500 something all in might only cost you 15k points, meaning you're getting north of 3 cents per point. If you have one of their credit cards, this is a great use case of an anniversary Category 1 to 4 free night award. Putting it another way, you might be paying $95 for a $500 a night hotel. On a side note, if you want to learn about cards, we have links on the website asksebby.com and also down below in the description box. Make sure the links are competitive, but otherwise, it's a huge way to support the channel, so thank you in advance. Taking a look at the property, a big note is that this is a conference hotel, and there's a lot going on. There's 2 towers east and west and a sky bridge that connects them. When you arrive, you'll probably get dropped off at the east tower. The moment you walk in, you're greeted with a giant atrium. The check-in desks are up the escalators. Both the east and west towers have rooms, and generally east has better views. Walking across the sky bridge, we have the West Tower. There's a nice fireplace area here called the living room. We never saw it open during our stay, so I'm guessing it's meant for private events, but it looks really nice. Towards the corner is the gym. This is a pretty large gym with a ton of new equipment, even some stuff I haven't seen before that lights up. I guess it's just standard equipment, but just with more lights and gizmos. Design-wise, it's not the most motivating or impressive gym, but the equipment is clean, there's a lot of options, and that's what matters. Unsurprisingly, mornings and afternoons are pretty busy here, but evenings are relatively empty. On the bottom floor of the West Tower are the meeting and conference rooms, but otherwise not much going on here. Compared to the East Tower, the West is significantly more corporate and less impressive. Downstairs is also a rideshare pickup spot, so just a heads up if you are calling anything. Heading up the elevators, we have the Club Lounge. This is definitely one of the smaller lounges we've been to and not the most impressive, but it works, especially if you're waiting on a room. Snacks remind me of Costco, think the variety pack of chips and also some packaged pastries, so nothing too crazy. There's waters, sodas, and other drinks available, and also coffee machines, so not a bad spot to post up. There's 2 sides and a ton of seating options, depending on if you're looking to work or relax or even read. In terms of views, nothing crazy, it's mostly other office buildings. If you have Globalist status, I think this is a great pit stop. I wouldn't use a guest of honor here though, since it doesn't seem impactful enough to care. We did miss happy hour service, but talking to some other guests, it's pretty much the same type of stuff, but with alcohol added in. Speaking of food, if you have elite status, breakfast is at American Craft Kitchen and Bar, back at the East Tower. Next to this is Stetson's, which is known for seafood and steak, but didn't look too interesting. Also here is Market Chicago, which is the convenience store. Call me crazy, but I don't think ramen noodles should be $10, especially if it's just instant noodle reheated. Up a floor is the big bar, which can get pretty fun at nighttime, but still looks beautiful during the day. If you're a fan of architecture or design, I think there's a lot to appreciate with the East's lobby. There's something about the giant glass atrium with the wood tones, high ceilings, and the lights peeking in that made me audibly wow when I first stepped in. It feels like you're entering an indoor city plaza more than a hotel, and there's an energy with that. During this trip, we had the chance to check out the Pokémon Fossil Museum. This is a special exhibit within the Field Museum, which is Chicago's largest natural history museum. There's exhibits on animals, Egypt, gems, and a host of other topics. The headliners for the museum are the dinosaurs, including Maximo the Titanosaur and Sue the T-Rex. The Pokemon exhibit plays off this and blends real paleontology with Pokemon fossil lore. Basically, they're showing you how some of the Pokemon are inspired by real-life animals and creatures. When I was little, I actually wanted to be a paleontologist, so this allows you to let your inner kid out while still learning. If you are looking to visit, note that it does require an add-on ticket beyond normal admission. Given the demand, I'd recommend buying it in advance since it often sells out day of. It's running from May 22nd, 2026 to April 11th, 2027, and worth a stop if you're in town. With a visit, you also get a limited edition Archeops Pokemon card at the entrance of the exhibit. It's one per ticket in the main chase of the exhibit. With that said, let's do a full walkthrough of the exhibit, whether you want to relive the trip or you don't otherwise have a chance to go yourself. Stepping in, you're greeted with Excavator Pikachu riding on Aerodactyl, and this is a perfect picture spot, whether for yourself or for the cards. The first section is about Pokemon, the history of the game, show, and world, and also how dynamics of different things work. The next section is about paleontology and how the goal is to basically use Pokemon to spark an interest in it, especially for kids, but even adults as well. The first big display is Arcan and Archeops, which are the first bird Pokemon. In our world, one of the closest parallels is the Nyctosaurus, which was around 87 million years ago. Next, we're going back to Aerodactyl from the front. The closest real-world equivalent is pterosaurs, which were flying reptiles from 66 million years ago. Also, there are elements of the exhibit which are real-world marked with red, and then the Pokemon World ones are blue. Switching to the next section, we have Tortuga and Caracosta, which are thought to be the ancestors of modern turtle Pokemon. In our world, we've actually had sea turtles since the prehistoric age. Those ones were up to 15 feet big and not great swimmers, so different from the ones we're used to today. Moving on, we have Omanite and Omastar, which are technically extinct Pokemon that you can revive through a restoration machine. The closest ancestor in our world are Ammonites, and they look exactly the same minus the color. Continuing with the water theme, we have Relicanth. The story here is interesting since it's based off of coelacanth, a real fish people thought had been extinct for millions of years until they were accidentally caught in 1938 and 1999. Currently, both species are some of the most endangered fish on Earth. Also, in case you're curious, they apparently taste terrible and cause diarrhea. Kabuto and Kabutops are similar to horseshoe crab or lobsters that use hard exoskeletons to support it. Kabutops is probably the scariest Pokemon and is straight from a horror movie, since it slices its prey to suck out their fluids. Outside of that though, these are based off horseshoe crabs, who have walked the seafloor around 445 million years ago. Anorith and Armaldo are sea-dwelling Pokemon that have 8 wing-like arms to swim and catch prey. This is based on Anomalocaris, which is an extinct arthropod and was actually one of the first apex predators. Moving to the land, we have Tyrunt and Tyrantrum, which are dinosaur Pokemon. Unsurprisingly, they're based off Tyrannosaurus rexes, which were one of the largest predators on Earth. For context, they grew from the size of a chicken as a hatchling to 40-foot adults in 20 years. This is probably the signature display of this exhibit and worth enjoying. Going to the other room, we have Lildeep and Crandalee, which are sea lily Pokemon. These are based off sea lilies or crinoids that are from 485 million years ago. Even though they look like plants, they're actually closer to sea urchins or starfish. Interestingly, they used to live in shallow water, but the modern species only live in the deep sea now. Next, we have Amora and Aurorus, which are rock and ice type Pokemon that live in mountain ranges. These are based on sauropods, which were the largest land animals to ever live. You can tell how big they were by their thigh bones. Continuing with dinosaurs, we have Shieldon and Bastiodon. Despite looking scary, they're berry-eating Pokemon. These are based on other horned dinosaurs known as ceratopsians, which are a group of plant-eating dinosaurs from 140 million years ago. The one most of us probably know would be the Triceratops. Getting towards the end of the exhibit, we have Cranidos and Rampardos. They have iron-hard skulls with head spikes to headbutt opponents. Despite being strong, they're not known for being very smart. This is based on Pachycephalosaurs, which was a dinosaur with a large bony dome surrounded by spikes and bumps. It was believed that these animals did headbutting contests similar to modern-day rams. The next section is on the Maison Creek and also actual paleontologists and how they do their work. Outside of a few photo spots at the end with Pikachu, that's the finish line for the exhibit. Along with your entry to the museum, you also have a ticket for the gift shop. This is a great opportunity to pick up an excavator Pikachu to remember the trip by. Beyond this exhibit, there's also a lot more to the Field Museum, and I'll try to put those scenes in a future video. For second dinner, we're at American Craft. So the main reason we're here is because we do have a $25 credit that we can only use tonight. We can't use it on the day of checkout, and since it's a one-night stay, that's tonight. $25 is pretty much a burger, but instead we paid a little bit more to get brisket. So it's a pound of brisket, and there's 2 sides. We have fries and vegetables. The brisket doesn't look bad, but let's give it a taste. It's a little bit bland from what I expected and what I'm used to, and also pretty chewy, so I'm used to a longer cook, maybe like 8 or 12 hours, and here it feels like it's maybe like just made or maybe a little bit, but it's just very chewy. It doesn't really fall apart that well. Manny called it Cisco brisket, and I wouldn't disagree. It's technically brisket, it's fine, but it's very mediocre. So it scratches my itch for meat, but not really brisket, if that makes sense. Just not really what I expected. It's fine by all means, but set your expectations. Moving on, we have fries. Not the most colorful, but let's give it a taste. Not a bad crisp to it. Could use a little bit more salt, but I just add that myself. There is a bit of a weird aftertaste, which makes me question the oil they're using. I'm guessing it's just a generic one for everything, and maybe that's why. It has a very heavy aftertaste. Not sure if that makes sense, but it's just not the greatest. Trying the veggies. Veggies are good, but hard to screw that up. Taking a look at the breakfast spread, we have oatmeal with a bunch of toppings, maple syrup and French toast, bacon, pork sausage, chicken sausage, roasted potatoes, scrambled eggs, vegetable frittata, and veggies towards the far left. Next, we have a bunch of meats as well as cheeses and fruits and tomatoes. So lots of items here, some fruits and yogurt next to it, and then also some smoked salmon. So lots of different ways to make it depending on what you're after. Switching over to the far left side, you have a lot of pastries. So plain croissants, multigrain croissants, chocolate, and towards the bottom, you have a ton of muffin choices. On the right of it is going to be a ton of danishes, cinnamon rolls, and a lot more danishes and maple croissants below. Final main section is going to be the main bread one. So a lot of standard ones, white rye, sourdough, English muffins, and a ton of bagel options. A lot I haven't even seen before. Acai go, bagels, blueberry, raisin, sesame, everything plain and gluten-free. I ended up starting off the omelet since it looked the most interesting, and it is pretty sizable. Looks like 2 or 3 eggs worth, and there's a ton of toppings. I did everything and did extra ham and also made it spicy with jalapenos. Not the most elegant looking, but it works. Also, this was included as part of the Globalist benefit. If you don't have status, then you're paying for the breakfast. Globalist, you can pick items or do the buffet. Buffet looks pretty good, so that's what we opted for. Cutting into it, it's a pretty hefty omelet. A tad heavy on the cheese, but otherwise perfect, so even though it doesn't look the best, it tastes great. For the Globalist benefit, you also get coffee and juice complimentary. Coffee's not the greatest, but it's actually decent. It's not as watery as I was worried it'd be. It wakes you up. Juice is normal, just out of a carton, but still works. Alright, round number 2. Ended up hitting up the buffet for a few different items, bacon, smoked salmon, a few different pastries, fruit, and also a sausage. I am a little skeptical with the pastries, but let's give it a shot. Starting with the croissants, the color doesn't look the best. Also, it looks a little pale to me. Outside is crunchy. That's pretty much it though. Outside is good, but it's very dense and also pretty heavy. Not that much butter taste either. I love croissants, but I don't think that's worth the calories. Sausage. It's pretty normal, but feels a little sad. Bacon. The bacon's a bit better. I get that. Smoked salmon. It's okay, but has a very strong aftertaste. I've had better. Apple pastry. I know it's mass-produced this school-level food, but this one's actually not bad. Not too sweet, good texture, a little flat, so not as crispy and layered as you'd hope, but it's better than a lot of the other things here. Last up is the fruit. They cut it pretty close to the rind, which is not ideal, but even the parts that aren't close to it are just not the sweetest. Honeydew's a bit better than the cantaloupe, but just doesn't feel right. I'd still eat more of the honeydew though, because I just don't have that a lot in my normal life, but if you are a fruit connoisseur, you'd probably want to pass. Given the option, I would stick with the omelets and the fresh egg station. Also, in case you're curious, we do end up doing quite a bit of work in the morning.
Overall, I think this is a solid city hotel if you come in with the right expectations. This isn't meant to be an ultra-luxury city hotel like the Waldorf Astoria Chicago, but instead it's a mid-level city hotel. Arguably even worse, Hyatt Regencies are primarily conference hotels that usually just churn out customers and guests. This one feels different though. Unlike most Regencies we've been to, this one actually seems to have an energy and a heart to it. Most of the other ones are just cold and depressing, while this one has a soul. The main areas actually sparked joy, and the rooms were nicer than I thought they would be. In its lane or category, I would put the hard product into A tier. It went beyond my expectations, and I was pleasantly surprised. For soft product, it met expectations. Just business as usual, and I'd put it into B tier. People were generally friendly, but nothing really good or bad to report. Especially if you're visiting in the summer, depending on the retail price, this can be an amazing use of your points or certificates. A nice room, a fair price, and great location makes for a happy and fun stay. Again, if you want to learn about cards, we have links on the website, asksebby.com, and also down below in the description box. If you made it to this point, leave a T-Rex emoji in the comments down below, and I'll try to heart it and respond. 3 questions: what are your thoughts on the Hyatt Regency Chicago? What's your go-to hotel when visiting? Also, have you checked out the Pokémon exhibit at the Field Museum? Let me know and everyone else know in the comments down below. Big favor thumbs up, share this, but otherwise hope you liked it. See you next time.